Hi, my name's Gary. I'm going to do a brief overview of MassTransit. The idea of these videos is to just give an introduction, but also for it to be a walkthrough. This is very first early days. I will be doing a number of follow-up videos that will improve upon the learnings that we've got from here. So I'll take the learnings that we've done in these videos and condense it down into a more easy to understand process. This is if you want to follow along, if you want to find the eureka moments, if you want to discover along with me, and also if you want to help me out in the comments and send me on a different direction, that would be great. So, together, let's see what we can learn. So if you've been following along, I've been going through one by one the documentation. It's just trying to get to grips with things. I've created an ASP.NET application and I've just been playing around with this. And in this video, I'm going to have a look at the console application that we've got here. So console applications are really simple. They're generally just a startup program. So they should be relatively simple to build. So I'm just going to dive in and see if I can do this now. So let's open up a terminal. So as I walk along, I'm going to be building up this archive of code that I can then use to improve as I go along. So not now. So within the previous one, I did build a console app. Or did I? Just bear with me one sec. So yeah, that was part of some research that I was doing. So let's have a look at the documentation. Let's see where we're up to. So to create a new console application, it's standard .NET new territory. So let's go into this, and this is going to be a publisher. So let's call that a publisher. What should I call it? Let's call it MassTransit Console App. Publisher. I think that's the right syntax for creating it in the folder. Yeah, great. So that's a basic app. Just going to open up that folder actually in code. Let's create a new terminal. .NET build. It should build. It's just to make sure that it's up and running. Okie dokie. So it's saying as part of this, as part of the main, we just want to copy and paste this in. I'm not a fan of copying and pasting, as you'll know if you watched it in my other videos, but this is okay for now. So program, I'm just going to take this and paste it in down here because I want to actually take my namespace. Oh, so that's interesting. I'll explain myself. Just discovered something. There's a weird rogue character there that got copied. So event contract with an interface. That's something that I was trying to find in a previous video that I did. I couldn't find the event contract NuGet package anywhere. Turns out it's here. It's just a namespace of an interface. So that makes a lot of sense. So what have we got in here? We've just got MassTransit, create using RabbitMQ. So you're going to need that service bus. So we're going to need the dotnet stuff. So I've got some stuff on my other screen that I'm just using to help me copy and paste. So dotnet add package MassTransit.RabbitMQ. That should include both MassTransit and obviously RabbitMQ extension method. Hopefully. Let's just have a look. Oh no, it doesn't. It just includes MassTransit.RabbitMQ. Okay. But that appears to be enough. Interesting. So that alone seems to have solved the dependencies. Cool. Let's see what else we've got. So another console app can be used as a consumer. So this is just a publisher. So, okay, let's see what we win from that. .NET build. And what I want to do is also I've still got RabbitMQ running, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this so I can show you what I do. Oh, just bear with me one sec. So obviously I can do this on the command line, but it's a pain. So actually I like Patena for managing my containers. So that's RabbitMQ gone. What I'll do is I'll show you how I install RabbitMQ. Just using the command line, I run this tool to get to run on localhost so I can connect to it. I expose port 8080 as the UI, and I'm including the management console because I really want the management console to play about. So, you know, about 3 or 4 seconds later, you know, that will be running. If I go back to Patena, you should see that that's running. And if I go here, just refresh, a couple of seconds later, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come on, he says. There we go. And it should be guest and guest as the default username and password when you first create this. So you can see it's brand new. There's no exchanges apart from your default stuff that you get. There should be no queues and there'll be no connections. So let's see what I get from here. .NET run. So this is going to use the publish, and it's going to publish this message to value entered. So it's going to use event contract value entered possibly as the exchange name, and it's going to push that message. It's going to ask for like you to say something. So if I have a look at the moment now, I've got a connection, which is good. I've no exchanges and I've no queues. So if I just type in a message, not there. Here. So there's my message gone, and I get an exchange. But the worry is it's not bound to anything, so that message is lost. There's no queues created, and that's because I've not actually set up the endpoint. This is just a publisher, so no endpoint was set up with this. Now my guess is that they're going to do that in the remainder of this doc. So I'm just going to stop this for now. Let's have a look at the next one. So this was the publisher or producer. And this is the consumer or listener that's going to listen to my message. So this is another console app. So okay, let's do the whole story again. So it's .NET new console, was it? Yeah. So .NET new console, and I want to call this MassTransit Consumer. Let's go MassTransit Consumer. Yep, great. And I want to change code to point to that directory. I'm sure there's a way of doing it whilst being in it. That's not it. Code here. Save. I think I made a mistake there. No, it should be alright. So copy and paste again. Oh no. This is there we go. This is the listener or consumer. So copy and paste. Should never copy and paste. Later. Should really update because that's going to get annoying. I want to keep that namespace. I don't like this namespace. I don't like the word listener. I prefer consumer and producers. Include MassTransit. Right, yeah. And what have we got here? Don't like that way of indenting. So consumer context, that's a MassTransit thing. Obviously, iConsumer is a MassTransit thing. So in this scenario, I'm going to need MassTransit, but it must be connecting to RabbitMQ. Yeah, of course it is. There. So same thing again. I'm going to include the package for RabbitMQ. Terminals, paste that in. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Because I know when I'm watching stuff online, sometimes you can't see a thing. Right, okay. Event contracts. Oh, that's that bloody namespace thing again. Stupid. Right, so the thing is, event contracts is actually in here. Where is it? Console app. It's in here. So the only way to get it in the other one is to copy. Well, I said the only way. Of course, it's not. Is to copy and paste it. We need a shared lib or something. NuGet package or some other way of doing it, because this is crap copying and pasting it in. And I'm getting that weird character thing. There we go. Okay, so I should build .NET build. Okay, .NET run. So what we're going to get here, we're going to get an endpoint, which I think means a queue called event listener, and any messages that drop in there is going to be consumed by this event consumer. Okay, and that's just gonna print this out to the screen. There's no async 808, so it's just morning, but I copied and pasted this code from the site. Should really be wrapped in a task or something, but ehoo. Let's have a look at queues. Let's see what I've won. Let's create an exchange. Bit odd. Right. It's not quite right because event listener. I didn't want that. I wanted it to listen to that. I would have assumed, because otherwise, what's the point in this demo? This code. Because let's say if I fire up now, if I fire up code, if I fire up my publisher, let's put this on that side, and let's put the consumer on this side. Oh, now you're tied to try and do that. What am I doing? That's the wrong way around, isn't it? No, it's not. .net run. Makes sense to have the publisher on the left for English speaking people. What have I done? It's because I... Okay, you can ask me a message. Yeah, so if I say hello, it went to hello. That's really weird. How? It must just be because we're using the same value entered. Let's have a look at the queue. So we've got value entered. Oh, it's set up the binding to event listener. What about event listener? Event listener's got it as well. That makes no sense, does it? Because I don't want two exchanges. I just want one. So I wonder if I delete this, if I go back to my publisher, where do I go? So what I'm trying to do is, right, yeah, it's broken. Okay. So that's saying it can't find the event contract anymore, which makes sense because I deleted it. So if I stop and run again, I'm just gonna check. Hello. Hello. How are you? Test. So that's completely gone again. If I stop this, so what I'm trying to do is work out who makes what, so I can figure out which one's the right one. Because now I'm assuming that I've got both. When I type my message, do you see me? It does go in, do you see me? Now, if I was paying a bit more attention, I'd know which one did it. Now, my guess is that it was this one, because if I go into Event Listener and delete that, here I've got this value entered and it's, oh, it's not bound. Ah. So yeah, I've broken it. Stop it and start it again. Test. It's still broken. But I've got value entered. And if I stop and start the consumer, now you see me. Now you see me, right. So it's a bit brittle with the way that this needs to run. Now, this is just me learning, so don't worry. It's not that there's something wrong. It's just that as we learn, we get better. So what's happening here is that we're getting the event listener. Now, what I want to do is go through. I've got no connections. I want to delete these two event listeners, this, exchanges, so that I can really understand what's being created. So I'll delete these down. Okay, so I've no queues and I've no exchanges apart from my default. If I now go to I want to go to the consumer first because it seems to be the thing that does the most. So I'm going to go to a consumer. It's probably going to create a queue called event listener. So that's up and running. So that's created the exchange called event contract value entered and an event listener queue. And that's created the binding between event contract value entered and the event listener. So the way that's worked is it's taken the name here as the queue name, but it's inferred the name of the exchange, probably name of or something like that, where it's taken the value of the namespace plus the type and passed it in. One thing I really like about this syntax actually is the fact that you don't have concrete objects. We've just got interfaces that tell us how our DTLs should look. It's a way of being able to say, look, your data should just look like this, but you don't end up putting any logic or code in your DTLs. It is just pure data that you're passing around as messages, not logic, which is really cool because when you make an instance of this, you're just doing new um, anonymous types, that's it. But the anonymous types will actually cast because you got it right. And we're getting IntelliSense and everything because of this templated type. And that's pretty cool. I like that. What I don't like is the mixture of who has the rights and the ability to create the exchange. Because here the consumer created the exchange and the queue. So let's show that we've got the exchange, event contract, value entered, and a queue with event listener as the value. I'm going to delete this. So queues, event listener, delete queue. Exchanges, let's delete that. So what I'm trying to do now is show the opposite side. Event listener, I didn't realize that would come in. Right, even I'm getting confused now as to what was created then. Did that also create an exchange? Right, I'm just going to do this again. Apologies if you're getting bored in the video, but I just need to know this for a fact. So if I run the consumer, I should get an exchange called value entered. So event contract value entered, and I should get a queue with the name of event listener. and the binding should be set up for me. And it also created an event listener exchange. Which is bound from event listener value entered exchange into the from this exchange to event listener. I don't understand the point in that. That sends to the event listener. That seems to have binding from event contract value entered into the event listener queue. And there'll be obviously an event listener queue. Makes no sense to me that. I don't get it. The pointless. You only need one. In fact, you don't even really need one. You could just use the default with this type of queuing system. So let's see if I can play about with that. Right, so let's try the opposite. Let's clean this up. Delete everything down. Obviously, you could call the API and you could purge everything. I've just not bothered setting that up yet. Listener, delete that. Okay, queues, exchange. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna change the names because I'm gonna say that the event listener is event contract plus it's plus name of. I don't think you can do name of on a namespace. Don't think it works. So I'm going to keep it like that. Just so that my queues are called that in the hopes that it's going to not double up. That's just the async warning. Ah, spelt it wrong. Idiot. Honestly. Can I spell it wrong? Did I not copy and paste it? I always copy and paste because I always spell it wrong. Let's clean it up. Come on, hurry up. Shortcuts would be good. So there's the name of the queue. That just noticed the queue name was looking quite good. Okay, so run. So that's running, kind of. Yep, it's running. So we get a queue called event contracts value entered. Bindings from this exchange to event contract. So what the hell? Move on. What's it doing? So if I just unbind and unbind, yeah, this exchange queue. I'm going to do it by hand just to see what it should look like, or what I feel it should look like. Yeah, it should just say binding this exchange to this queue. But it just wasn't, was it? It didn't look like that at all. Oh shit, what would happen then? Oh no, it's okay. So event contracts, value entered. Custom context, yeah. So fire that up. Should just get one exchange. But for some reason we get some crazy bindings set up. So from to. If I now set up my producer, hello. So you get this. So that's working, and it's a little bit more closer to what I want. I just don't understand why the bindings are set up this way. I mean, there's two bindings set up. I don't understand as well from and to, because that's obviously from this exchange. And yeah, that's this exchange. So it's saying from this exchange to this, and there's two bindings set up. We got one queue, which is good. We've got one exchange, which is good. We got that. So if we have a look at the code, it's pretty simple. You know, we've got a publisher that's got the connection to using RabbitMQ. We have a cancellation token. We set up the bus, which is the thing that runs in the background that allows us to connect to Rabbit. Some boilerplate code just for starting the bus up and then for running through a task and asking for some input. When it gets the input, it just runs a publish, tells the publisher what type of message type it's going to get. And once we've finished, I think if you type quit, then it'll break and it'll run the finally to stop the program. So if I was to type in quit, it'll hit that and then stop the bus asynchronously. And this really is identical. You know, if we work through it, there's a couple of configurations that we're doing differently. So we're actually using the constructor to configure the RabbitMQ service factory bus, so that we're setting up endpoints, setting up queues, and we're subscribing them queues to these consumers. Then we've got the standard boilerplate of saying hello kind of thing to the user and allowing them to stop it. Then we've got the consumer down here at the bottom, which processes that message which has been published from here. Cool thing here is that we can see these are two completely separate applications. They could be running on two different servers. They could be running in two different countries. That one publishes a message. That one subscribes to it. And we can obviously read this message and serialize it back to that type and then work on it and do business logic, so we can delegate responsibility from this app to this app. So that's pretty cool. But there's a couple of things obviously I'm missing or I don't quite understand in why setting up them multiple bindings. There seems to be a shared responsibility here of who's responsible for configuring that binding. And I don't want to solve that now whilst you're watching this video. It's going to come together as we work through these examples. But one of the things I'm really not happy about, in fact I won't even entertain, is this copying and pasting of these event contracts. That's just wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create an event contract shared lib just to hold this stuff. So let's see if I can figure that out. We need just a shared library really. So it's more of a package library. reading it on my other screen. So let's see if I can do this. So if I just come up into my RabbitMQ folder, what I want to do is create, I want to add a new class library, which is just going to have the interface in it. I can't quite remember how you make a class library. .NET Core, new class lib. So class library, common library, WinForms, worker, tests, and units, blah 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 blah. Jeez, there's a lot here. Ooh, is that actually a React template? Okay, I think class libs is going to win, isn't it? Simple enough. Yeah, I think so. So .NET new class libs, and the name of the folder is going to be event contract. Paste. Really? Event contract. So. Okie dokie. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to cut it out of here. I'm going to open up code in here. Just before your brain gets pickled with so much. Later. Let's create a new file. Oh, what was it called? Actually, let's just paste it in here. I think it was value, yeah, value entered. So value entered. Okay. Shouldn't even really need to build this because there's nothing to it. But let's give it a go. .NET build. So this is pretty cool that I can just have this library project that's just sat here, that's got my shared interfaces in there. That means that I can reuse this same project in other systems, and if I change an interface, then it's going to replicate throughout the rest of the project. Just be really careful that your interfaces should be for life. You should never do that because that's a mutation. What you're doing is you're changing something, and that should never happen in your interfaces. What you should do is do that and mark this one as depreciated or deprecated or whatever it is. Dep. There's a I can't think of it off the top of my head, but there's a way of marking it as deprecated, and that basically tells other developers, don't use value anymore, use values instead. Otherwise, if you change your interface, then what you're going to do is you're going to break your code. And worse still, when the data serializes, you might have one that's serializing that uses value, and it serializes to another consumer that needs the word values, and you're just giving yourself a really bad day. I like to think of it as interfaces are for life, not just for Christmas. They're a service contract, and you don't just change an API and say, "Oh, I just expected all the people who use my APIs to just know that this breaking change was about to come in." Don't implement breaking changes. Extend, don't change. Is my opinion. So let's build again. So I should be able to include now. If I go here and do a .NET build, I mean, I'm seeing error messages anyway. Oh, I'm still in the event contract. Silly me. mtConsoleApp publisher .NET build. Just to double check, I should get an error about the event contract, yeah, because obviously I took it out, deleted it, and I've moved it into its own project. So to do that, I want to add a reference. And if I go to the project file, what I can do is I can add a quick reference to this, and it's .NET add reference and the event contract. Now at the moment I've got a mono repository. I've got all of the code that I want in the same folder, which I actually like. Even with large teams, I just like the idea of it. It's easier. However, developers who start doing this all over the place, you got to ask yourself a question as to why. Why have a microservice architecture and event service architecture when every project includes other projects? You're just creating a monolithic application of publisher subscriber apps, which is deadly. Here, though, this is okay in my opinion because these are just interfaces about how all your apps interrelate. So I personally think it's safe, but you still have to be very careful. So that's that new project included. That should satisfy my event contracts. So now if I do .NET build, that should be okay. Yeah. And if I come out of here and do the same thing again, include the reference, that should disappear. Come on. Yep, there we go. And do .NET build. Right, perfect. So, you know, an example of that is I, as a developer, go, oh, do you know what? I don't like the word value. I'm gonna actually call it values. So I go to my interface here and I just change it to values, and I'm pretty happy. You know, I think that's a great idea. I come to here, I do a build, and everything appears to be working because I've not done a. Did I do a build of events? I did. That's interesting. So I was expecting to get a build error because values isn't actually called values anymore. If I go into it, values entered, that's values. So if I run this, because it's anonymous type, so it's actually not helping me out. Yeah. Okay, that's not how I expected that to go at all. So if I have these publishers and subscribers working side by side, I do dotnet run, build. Now that one complains because that's probably using it in a more concrete fashion. Why open it up in a new window? Stupid thing. So 40, yeah. So value entered is part of that interface. If I dive into it, you see I've got that. I've got values. So that's interesting that in my hopes and dashes of improving the producer, I actually broke the consumer the next time someone came along and built it. But my publisher's none the wiser. In fact, let me just clean this. Let me. How do you do that? .net clean. Wonder if there's a no cache option. Just kind of restore everything. Okay, built successfully. Wow. So if we'll have a look at that, if we go to RabbitMQ, queues, let's pull down a couple of messages. I'm not sure how this message will look in message called values. So that worked, but it's not really putting any kind of concrete nature into it. If I change that to XXX and run this, XXX message, if I go to RabbitMQ again and just get these messages, find XXX, it's empty. So it passed across an empty message because it didn't fill that contract. So when it tried to serialize it, it couldn't do it. But if I change it back to values, as I did before, come on. If I now get all the messages again, get messages, go down to the bottom, message as a value, XXX, right, yeah. So it's not allowing it to serialize and save and be published if it doesn't conform to this value, but it isn't actually giving us any kind of runtime or debugging errors, and the consumer's broken. So, changing interfaces and changing these things after the fact, you have to be very careful. So I'm just going to go back and reset all this. So I'm going to put you back to value. I'm going to rebuild.net, build, no cache. I don't even know if that does anything. Should do. dotnet build no cache, and we should be up and running again. .NET run. Come on, run. Yep. .NET run. Obviously, you can click the start button and everything. I'm just a console-y person. I started off in the Linux and Unix world, so it's hard to get out of. That's it, processing my empty messages. Hello again. Ah, exactly the same problem. Value. Now you see me. Now you see me. There we go. So that's pretty cool. Learned some good stuff here. So I'm happy now. I've got my event contractors separate library. We've got two really nice standalone separate apps, one producing and one consuming. So that was pretty good. What else do they do with this? So the next part is Topshelf. Okay. So as part of Windows, you can have these services, and these services run in the background. And the great thing about them is you can configure them to start up at when the server starts up, and they all just run nicely in the background. They've also got a bit of self-healing to them, so that if something crashes or something fails or it failed to read or write to the folder or anything like that that can cause an app to crash, it can restart itself and it can run as a different user, and it's a great way of running consumers, because you don't want to run these things as an app. No one wants to actually fire these things up, because where are you going to run it? How are you going to run it? How are you going to keep an eye on it? How do you know it's actually running? Who's going to go in every hour and check that something's up and running and is actually processing messages? Who's going to keep an eye on the queues and make sure that they're going down? That all turns out to be an absolute nightmare. So a simple way, probably not the best way, but the simple way of doing it is to have them as a Windows service. And Windows services just allow you to install them as a Windows service. You include a couple of NuGet packages, you configure it, and you're up and running. But it's a pain, an absolute pain to do, and it's difficult to debug. So there's a really cool program called Topshelf, or library, I should say, .NET. And this simplifies the process of making a service, really makes it a lot easier to do. So let's give this a go, shall we? So what we were looking to do here is there should be a start and stop. Yeah, so we've got a start where we start up the service, then we've got a stop where we stop the service. And that's pretty much it. We got to configure the service to run. And I think we also have to configure Topshelf as well. Yeah, which we seem to be doing here. So host factory, run, event consumer service. Then the event consumer service starts up the bus, which is then the RabbitMQ service to receive. That's your consumer. And here's the actual code that runs when we get that message. So let's give this a go, shall we? So let's create a new program. we're going to make a new console app, and we're going to call this MassTransit Consumer Top Shelf. So it's not going to be a console, it's going to be a top shelf. So cd into MassTransit top shelf. Let's fire a code in here. Okie dokie. Terminal. Date later. And we want to install Topshelf itself. We want a service. Trying to think of a good name. One of the hardest things about programming. And we want a public class that's going to kick everything off. Consumer service. And we're going to need a start and stop. So public void start. Come on. And we need a stop. So public void stop. This is just going to start and stop our service. So if we have a look at, let's have a look at the publisher. Because no, it's got to be the consumer. So I'm just going to close this publisher for now. Just keep up with the consumer. So what we're doing, we have got a bus, we are starting, and we are allowing ourselves to be stopped. So actually, it's just this stuff that I'm interested in for the start. And I'm going to want the bus to be a bit more scopy. Generate property. Going to obviously need MassTransit. For RabbitMQ, so I've got access to the bus. Great. Event consumer, right? Yeah, of course, yeah. Oh, and tasks. So that's going to require system threads and system task, or just system. Yeah, system. Value entered. Well, that's from my new package. So let's include that in. So let's add event contracts. And now we need the consumer bus I've made bigger. Did I? Yeah, bus controller's now at the top, so I don't know why you're complaining. Oh, it's not async, is it? Mm. Well, it should be all right. If I spelt it right. Ooh, why is it saying? Ah, it's because I didn't include MassTransit when I created the factory, so it wasn't able to infer the type. There we go. Makes more sense. Event consumer. Well, I've not got my consumer yet. It's still sitting in this code here. Is this right? This is the consumer. Yeah, consumer. So I just want you. I'm going to take you and put you down at the bottom. I'm not going to put you in a separate file for now. Okay. Thought it included system.task. System threads. Yeah. Looks okay. So it's rightly complaining again about the type because obviously not returning anything, but we should be okay. Need to start wrapping this up anyway because I don't want a 2-hour video. We also need to stop this puppy. So we need to run this when we want to stop. And it's capital B because we've now made it a property. So .NET build. Let's give it a fighting chance, get it to try and build and complain about what's not there. So await can only be used with async methods. Okay. So there we go, obviously. Public async. Yep. So that looks good. Not happy with the squigglies. I'm just gonna convert that to an await statement. Bit silly. There we go. Let's build that. Okay. .NET run. No. I need to set up my main, don't I? I need to set up actually MassTransit itself. Not MassTransit, sorry, the Topshelf. So as part of this, need to include it obviously itself using Topshelf. Then we need to create an instance of the host factory. I'm gonna run it. Bit of lambda. Set it up like that because that's his nonsense. Without that either. What we're gonna do, I think we need a service. We need a no, it should be in here already because it'd be the consumer. Yeah, because it's an instance of the consumer service that we want to fire up. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. IntelliSense is not helping me out here. Why not? Because normally means I've done something wrong. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just IntelliSense being weird. So we want to construct using a new instance of this consumer service. Cocked it up as well because it's got a lowercase c. That's not right. So when we start, so when the service is starting, I actually want to fire up the start method for my service. I'm just going to copy and paste that because when we stop, then I want to run stop. Does it stop? It should be, yeah. I want to also run this as well, obviously. I want to run my service as a local service. Good enough for now. And I want to set the description. So I've got a nice message. I think that might be enough. So the great thing about this is, there we go, it's wrapped our app up in Topshelf. And it now means that this app is up and running and it's started. And when we publish now, it should receive the message. Cool. Yep. So that's that. So it looks the same as what we did before. It looks like just the standard console app. But actually, the magic comes to what it's done with the binary itself. If we have a look at it, once we drill down all the way in, if we have a look at MassTransit top shelf, how do we do this? MassTransit Chopshelf.exe. If I run help, we can see now that we've got loads of options which are part of Topshelf for installing, disabling, setting it up so it runs as a username and password, what network host it's got permission to run as, whether you need some kind of special prompt permissions, and to get it installed. So this is really, really, really cool. I'm not 100% sure if I'm actually going to be able to do this because my machine has got some wicked crazy permissions on it. But I'll give it a go. If not, I'll post a video to Topshelf and you can just take my word for it. Explorer. Let's see if I can actually get a console here without my security system going nuts. Okay, let's see if I can ramp up permissions. Install it. Have I spelt it right? Yeah, I think so. No. Ooh, okay, nice. As with all security, there's always a way around it. There we go. There's MassTransit. Probably won't start. No, because it just doesn't have permissions to access this folder. But there's other ways. But I'm not going to do it in this video. It'd take too long. Just bear with me. So managed to bypass the Windows temp folder directory and make it trust me. I'm not allowed to write files to my drive. Everything has to be centralized, so that's why it went a bit iffy. So that started up. If I go to RabbitMQ now, if I look at my consumer connections, you can see now that my consumer's connected. If I disconnect and stop this service, then it'll disappear. So we can see that's now running as a service. And the cool thing is we can get this to start automatically when the operating system starts up. So we've got something that's constantly running. We can get auto recovery, we can log things. So this is a really nice way of just getting the consumer to run. So that's a great intro. So I think we're done here. Yep. We managed to get the console app up and running. We worked out where the illustrious event contracts actually lives. It was just copied and pasted in here. Then we were able to do a publisher and another console app, which was a subscriber. And then we demoed how to actually stick this all into Topshelf and have it running as a background service. Now, not very useful because this isn't doing anything apart from logging to the console, but obviously this can be saving stuff to a database, sending emails out, sending text messages. So these things that you don't want your core app to be doing are awesome for separating them out and moving them into a service distributed architecture. You know, I'm not responsible for sending emails out, plus I don't know if my email server's alive at the moment. I certainly don't want my customers to be hanging waiting for that. I don't want lots of asynchronous threads running on my main user interface, and I certainly don't want them running on a web server behind an API call. So here I can delegate that responsibility, and this is just awesome way of showing this. I'm glad that we got there pretty soon. So this is great testament to the documentation that we've got here, that they've got here on MassTransit. So I hope you like the video. I'll start getting it into more of the nitty gritty now in the next couple of videos. So I'm looking forward to it. So we start off with transports and understanding the different types of queues that MassTransit supports. As always, if you like it, hit that subscribe button.